Supermen.
Here's where I make everyone mad. I mean, what a work of art. So it is Firth of Fifth night here on Mild Mannered Supermen. Happy New Year, my brother Jake. Hope you're doing great.
I am, my brother. Hope you're doing the same.
All right, Firth of Fifth. We just heard the legendary intro. Tony Banks' masterpiece here, really put together largely by him. It's a song that he had composed and actually pitched for Foxtrot. It didn't quite fit, didn't quite make the cut, but it found its path onto Selling England by the Pound, and I'm very glad that it did. It's the third track of that album, and it's always been one of my top listens from this album. This grand piano intro to me is just pretty epic, and then there's a good amount of good stuff that happens throughout this song that I'm sure we're going to dissect here together.
Yeah, this is it's such a I don't know. Within this album, this track stands out as kind of the least rock and roll track,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But it's also I don't know, probably one of the most audiologically appealing songs because it's unique. And I think it gets this rap as kind of the classical song, right? As you hear that all the time. Well, it's got a classical opening, and it's kind of plays out that way. One, it's unique in the sense that it's Tony Banks just on a grand piano, and we're used to him on the mellotron. We're used to him on the the synthesizer. With the piano kind of taking a secondary or tertiary seat, just sitting way in the back. But here it is, right up front, and as a solo instrument, and he just bangs the hell out of it. It's it's pretty fantastic stuff. I'm getting kind of visions of Liberace as he's playing through this.
Yeah. I mean, it's so fun to just think about how it all came together and just knowing how talented he is on the keys, like just to be able to sit there and watch him. And actually, they didn't pull this one out. That piano intro was something that they didn't do live. He didn't really feel like his other keys could produce the same sound and move at the same speed that his fingers moved to really keep up with him. So while it was, a relatively prominent part of their stage show, that intro that we just listened to really wasn't part of what they were doing live because it is so intricate and it required the grand piano and a particular set of skills.
Well, and a sense of space, right? That's really kind of the other big requirement with an acoustic instrument like this is the reverb you get from the space that you're in. And you can hear it in this piece, particularly when he gets down low and he's banging on those keys and you hear them just kind of reverberate. That's bouncing around certainly within the sound box of the piano, but grand pianos are intended to be opened up, and what we're really getting there is just this massive reflection from the space that they're in, which must be a studio setting with good reverb dampening and all that kind of stuff. But it just sounds so clean and so good, and I think you're right. It's a real challenge to pull that off in a stadium or on a big stage when you're not, traveling with an orchestra.
Yeah. So anything interesting that you hear in that intro? I know that I mean we've touched on Genesis's wild time signatures, and I think there are a few switches in there. And then I but what key is it in? Is there anything unique
Yeah.
about that? Like, why does it stand out so much as such a classic piece?
Well, it's typical Tony Banks in a couple of regards, right? One, you have the aversion to playing traditional chord progressions, right? He really tries to avoid these dominant chord progressions that go basically a 1-4-5, or you know play into the kind of the classical structure, which is, to me, kind of makes this piece sound more like an early 20th century British composer of classical music, a Ralph Vaughan Williams or maybe a Gustav Holst. I kind of get the bright, almost music hall vibe from it, which certainly must have been a big influence for Tony, because it's been mentioned so many times by his bandmates, and to me that's kind of what this is, right? It's a kind of a classical piece in that post classical vein, and it's got a very English feel to it, to my ear. The other thing that you're calling out here, it's pretty much it's in B flat, or B. I can't remember exactly, but it does get modal because it's Tony Banks, right? So he's not staying necessarily in that key, but he's also not doing kind of the typical Tony Banks big interval leaps. I initially thought, Firth of Fifth might be a play on the fifth interval, right? And
Mm.
given that Banks kind of wrote this. But when you listen to this, that's not the movement that's happening. It's much more sequential, meaning he's just moving down a scale or up a scale with some modal additions. He's not jumping, a fourth or a fifth interval. If anything, his harmonics here are pretty traditional. He's playing a lot of thirds and a lot of sixths, which sound very pastoral, right? So that's one of the things that I think hits the ear so pleasingly with this. But then he gets us with this rhythmic kind of change up. And here's a fun trivia question. One other song that utilizes one of the time signatures that Tony Banks uses here, and I'll tell you, he's using 13/16 time and 15/16 time at certain points. And just to explain again, right? 13/16 time would be 13 beats in a measure, and a 16th note gets a beat. So as written, you'll see 13/16 notes in one measure, or 15/16 notes. What's normal would be 16/16 or 4/4 time, right?
Right.
And so,
I know I do think I know the answer, but I only know the answer because of you, because you were reproducing this song. You were recording this song in your home studio, just because it's one that we loved growing up. And I think, and I remember you talking about how it was in 15/16 time.
mhm.
And I think it's Queensryche, Silent Lucidity. Is that right?
You are correct, sir.
All
Yes,
right, good.
that song is in 15/16 time. So, what Queensryche does to kind of make up for the missing 16th note, every so many bars, they would add a measure of 1/4 time, right? And so they would add kind of 4/16 notes back to the mix, and it brings it all back around again. Tony Banks does no such thing here. He kind of levels his 13/16 time with 15/16 time, and he throws in some 2/4 measures. I'm certain, if we extrapolated this out, there's probably some mathematical model, right? I'm certain it comes around because it does. When the band comes in, they're right there on one. But I've never really dove that deep on this song to
Mhm.
count. I don't know. My eyes roll back in my head as we start to count. So we'll save that for some other time.
So this song is very notable for Steve Hackett's contributions. There is a pretty epic guitar solo later in the song that we'll get into, it's always resonated highly with me as a parallel to kind of David Gilmour's playing. You know, just kind of the the
Lyricism.
the yeah, the more paced guitar solos. The you know, it's not necessarily Steve doing all the tapping that he's usually done. And as I was looking into this a little bit more, you know, I found that it was actually written by Banks on the flute, and then Steve adapted it to his guitar solo. And what I find to be quite interesting about this solo as well is leading into it, there is a very heavy Tony Banks keyboard, whether it's Mellotron or just his keys. I don't know what he's playing, but it's so dense, Tony
Mm.
Banks. And, you know, there's this buildup of frustration probably from Steve Hackett that has been growing in his position in this band, where he's been noted as saying that the songs just became really overly dense in the keys, and it was hard to find a place to live with your guitar.
Hmm.
And as soon as you think that Firth of Fifth is going to be one of those dense keys songs, here he comes in with just this angelic, uh, beautiful guitar solo that he still plays on his tours around the country today, or around the world, I should say, today.
Yeah, I think this is one of the songs that really brought him to light because of that lyrical playing. You hear him on the earlier albums, he sounds very much like a kind of a proto prog metal guitar player, which is
Yeah.
fantastic, right? I mean, I love that. But here, I think you hit the nail on the head. I was going to compare this solo to David Gilmour as well, just
Yeah.
because he sings a bit more. It's a little less technical, but he's got such great fingers, that he can really drive the feeling of the song. And I think that's one of the things that really makes this piece special is that it's so much less about Peter Gabriel and his lyrics and kind of the showmanship that goes into it. Although I'm sure he's dressed up like a chicken and running around. But in the end, this song is about the music, right? It's about the actual vibe that the music establishes. And Steve Hackett's solo here is really famous. So if you go out and you kind of look at why is that, it is because of that bit of a departure from what he's been known for, right?
Hmm.
And this is him really kind of spreading his wings. But the other thing I think that is so exceptional here is how the band sets that guitar solo up. Just how this song sets the guitar solo up. And then kind of the vamping, the playing that's going on, the vibe that they establish behind the solo. It is magic, right? The timing of the solo in the song, the approach that they take, and again, it's not flashy. It's lyrical, and it's kind of almost like Steve is stepping in where Peter would normally be coming back in,
Right.
and Steve steps in with this just this thing. Um, and of course, it is one of the handful of times I think we've heard some mimicking between the instrumentalists. As you pointed out, Tony Banks wrote this flute solo for Peter Gabriel on flute. I'm pretty sure he wrote it on the keyboard, and Peter just plucked it out by ear or read the music or whatever on flute. But Steve Hackett comes in and mimics that in his guitar solo, and he does, um, you know, really a nice job of defining or redefining that line, restating that line. And it creates a thread through this song that helps pull it all together. Um, and that's magic. You have one or two of these on every album, and that's pretty much all you get.
Right.
So
Yeah.
I
In
think
the in the
here it
words
is
of
on this one.
Mike Rutherford. Yeah.
Exactly. And lastly, I just kind of want to say that in keeping with the idea that we've been talking about throughout this album, this is an English album, right? And I believe that Genesis is really trying to make that English statement. This song, although it has kind of minimal lyrics, the lyrics deal with themes that we've explored throughout this album, right? Changing times and being okay with that. Although it doesn't necessarily get, I think, as overtly English as some of the other ones. The name clearly is a British pun, right? The Firth of Forth versus the Firth of Fifth, ye old estuary in Scotland. So the name, I think, gives it that British, you know, that feel that they're well, the British stamp, right? The
Right.
feeling of the music, the vibe that's established to me. Like I said it before, I think it's very Ralph Vaughan Williams. I just kind of get that early 20th century British composer, and that I think is the British statement in this song. It's British music, right? for for lack of a better way of saying that.
Yeah, yeah, and I've always felt the title of the song, the last verse, the sands of times were eroded by the river of constant change. Like I just feel like they tied it together really nicely. Um, but I've not really listened intently to these lyrics to find any real meaning in what they're trying to do here. To me, this is much more of a musically inclined song. It does strike me as just one of those Tony Banks lyrically far out, storylines that are a little hard to keep track of. And he wrote the lyrics with Rutherford, and Rutherford went on to say that he wasn't that proud of these lyrics. Um,
Yeah,
but there's kind of three main guys that we've talked about here. Obviously at this point in the game, Phil Collins was really just more of an arranger. He wasn't really a writer at this point. But Gabriel has songwriting credits, but really just is a performer of this song, from what I can tell. Um, and I think the reason I'm telling this story and telling it in this order is I think the first time you probably realized that I had fully drunk the early Genesis Kool-Aid was out of the blue one day. I text you and I was listening to this song, and you probably won't remember this, but I texted you and I said, Firth of Fifth is the prime example of what Genesis would become after the Lamb. This song, and I've said this before about other songs, especially the Tony Banks driven songs, but this song could be lifted and placed onto Wind and Weathering,
hmm
where Steve Hackett is still very much present. Maybe Trick of the Tail, but really that Wind and Weathering feel and atmosphere that Tony Banks creates on that album, I feel like this would fit in there. And it's probably the prime example of why the guys likely knew that they could move on after Lamb, after Gabriel left,
hmm
is because they were able to put pieces of music like this together between the four of them.
Yeah, that's a good observation, Jared. I think I would agree with that. Um, this piece kind of speaks to the future of the capabilities of the songwriting going on here, right? And you don't
Yep.
necessarily need Peter to make a great song, even though it never hurts.
Of course. So let's hear him. Let's hear Peter kind of belt out this first verse, and we'll get into the song, and we'll move with you through the Hackett solo.
The path is clear, though no eyes can see. The course laid down long before. And so with gods and men, the sheep remain inside their pen. Though many times they've seen the way to leave.
I like that imagery though. The sheep been let out of their pen 100 times. They know how to get out. They stay there anyway, just like people.
all gaze with joy to see reflected there the trees, the sky, the lily fair. The scene of death is lying just
I love that cymbal work.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a ride cymbal. Bill's doing a great job on it.
from view, like a cancer growth is removed by skill. Let it be revealed. A waterfall is madrigal, an inland sea is symphony. Na, 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 na. Untitled songs urge the sailors on till lured by the siren's cry.
I didn't mean to discount Peter's role in this. You know, he's clearly the voice, but
The flute
my
solo
point was
is
made.
Yeah, and I understand. But here, you know, this nice little addition on the flute. So
Yeah, and this is a very prominent flute playing. Like, I mean, it's carrying the tune at this point.
and that little theme that Banks has kind of put in there, right there, and you hear it right there. This is very Baroque. This is the kind of form Bach or Handel would write in. Which is again why I think this song gets so much of its, classical cred.
Yeah, Rutherford just pounding away in the background. Big schmaltzy chord.
Yeah. What's funny to me is when you take that same theme off of the grand piano and you put it on a Moog, it just doesn't have the same vibe. It's awesome, but it's so much more prog rock.
Steve getting warmed up.
A little bit of a vibe change here at the solo. They have that transition there. It goes from really kind of a big, triumphant, major, build up into this kind of minor, almost bluesy, smoky vibe. And again, how understated is Mike Rutherford's bass playing back there, but he's just laying down a vibe. It's so smooth.
I just think it's important that they open the door on this song for Hackett. In so many of their songs coming up in there that I'm sure we'll cover, they don't ever give them away in, and that creates frustration. And he seeks kind of a solo career as an outlet. But here they were all one.
There's the flute line that he's mimicking. This part right here, could you just pick this up and make a Whitesnake song out of it? That kind of arpeggiated keyboard in the background.
Couple of Genesis biographers, Dave Bowler and Brian Dre, described this as the crowning moment of Hackett's time with the band.
I could see that.
Edward McCann, who was a rock author, described this as one of the finest 9.5 minutes of music that Genesis ever put down. It's definitely top 10 for me. I don't know if it's the finest, but it's top 10.
This section right here, it just doesn't get much better.
Now as the river dissolves in sea,
Back to this main section.
has claimed another soul. And so
A little bit more of a rock swing in the background, though.
remain
Yeah.
inside their pen until the shepherd leads
The grooves have gotten
away.
heavier.
The sands of time were eroded.
Feels like it's slowed down a little bit too, but that might just be me.
Constant change.
Well, that's Firth of Fifth, just beautiful. So
Yeah.
Gabriel used to tell. There's an interesting history of this song's use live, and Gabriel used to tell a story on stage as, hey, as the band was tuning up, and he was doing his little introductory monologues, but he would talk about a group of travelers who were dying of thirst, and they came across a group of corpses. Like, see, this is the stuff he comes up with. Where none of this is in the song, but because the human body's made up of 75% water, they begin to jump on the corpses and try and extract water from their mouths. But they soon realize that they're using more energy trying to extract water from these dead corpses than they're actually receiving. So one of the guys in the group is a Scotsman, and he realizes that when he jumps over to the fifth body, and he calls the mouth Firth because he's Scottish. And Gabriel's telling this whole story about this Scottish guy using the term Firth and jumping on the fifth body. And Tony Banks is probably like, what the like, what? What? He's just getting ready. So does that story mean anything to you? Like, you hear that in the song? Like, I know you're much more into kind of the Scottish influences, the English influences, and all of that. But gosh, I don't know what to take from that.
You know what? I got nothing. I think.
Yes, I've stumped you.
Yeah, I think that's one. I had not heard that story. That's that's a good one.
I can't find it. I can't find him actually telling it, but I've obviously read about him telling that story.
Yeah, it's interesting. What it makes me think is, there's kind of this traditional, Scottish English rivalry, and you see it it manifest in a bunch of different ways, and one of those is just kind of recognizing cultural differences between the people. And so I could see that as sort of a, it's old Scottish folklore or something. It comes from the magical Highlanders, and this is one of those. It's kind of like the Will o' the Wisp. It's just a Tale of the Isles. One of those sorts of things.
Another live story. They did attempt this song with the grand piano intro, not played on a grand piano, but played on the other instruments that Tony Banks surrounded himself with on their live show. And he made enough of a error in the introduction that it forced Collins to come in on the drums just a little bit too early, and it just kind of jacked up the entire thing. And just given how prideful I think Tony Banks is, he just said, we're going to cut that out. We're not going to do that anymore. And here are the reasons why. So there is some Genesis lore about that. The song did survive the departure of Gabriel in 1975. Collins, was known to sing it live, most notably on the Seconds Out album recorded in Paris. They did remove it after Hackett left the band, so they didn't reinstate it from, this. It was not part of the 1978 tour, but it was reinstated in the 1981 tour, and as part of the reunion show in 1982. And they had it as part of their medley all the way up until the 2007 show. So it definitely had some staying power inside the band.
Yeah, and I think that probably speaks to the legacy of it. It's a fan favorite, right? You hear that piano intro, and you know what you're in for. It's unique, and that I think because of that, it stands out.
Yep. All right. Well, we are well on our way through the Selling England by the Pound album. We will keep bringing these to you. We've got a few more real classic ones to hit on this album. Looking forward to getting into The Lamb with you. Those will be some interesting episodes here in the next couple of weeks and to the months. We are Mild Mannered Supermen. We enjoyed bringing this one to you. Check out anywhere that you listen to your podcast, you'll be able to find us. But look us up on YouTube. Check us out on TikTok, pretty much anywhere. Spotify does keep pulling us down. So if you're listening on Spotify, you've got probably another day or two. But my daughter's actually given me some advice on how to kind of fight that. So I think we'll have an opportunity to get those episodes back up and running.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, we want the Spotify crowd to hear.
For sure. All right. Any brilliant parting words from you, my brother? Happy New Year to you.
Happy New Year, and this has been a lot of fun. Looking forward to keeping this going in 2026.
Mild Mannered Supermen, Mild Mannered Supermen, Mild Mannered Supermen.